Do you like lists? I love lists. Lists of books, even better. Hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Marilyn Maya, sometimes called the Baby Boomer Booktuber. And today, I have a list of classic books for you. I don't know if you've noticed, but lately there's been a lot of booktubers doing the classic books you have to read before you die, the most important books you should read before you die lists. And I'm a sucker for these kind of lists, and I follow all of these people. Most that comes straight to my mind is Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot, and Britta Bowler, and she has her own list before she dies list, concentrating on women's books, because her channel is called The Second Shelf. So when I came across a list from one of my favorite writing websites, and the title of the list was The Essential Classic Books You Have to Read Before You Die, I said, I'm in. What I really loved about it, I downloaded this, it's almost like if you remember Chutes and Ladders, it starts with, you go all the way around, and it starts with classic books, and then it's modern giants, genre masterpieces, international greats, children's classics, and the fun house. And I said, yeah, I'm in for this. And it's not really a really big list. It's not 1,000 books you have to read. I think these are only 100. But they also have another list of classic books that are like 50. And I'm going to go through all of them, but not today. Today I'm only doing half of the classic books on the shorter list that I downloaded. And, of course, all of these lists are subjective, and I wanted to see how many books that I read, how many books on the list that I want to read, and I hope to tell you a little bit about the books. I only own 2 of the books on the first list, so this is going to be like part 1 of a second 2-parter of and what it's called is The Essential Classic Books to Read Before You Die. And yeah, I've not read all of them. So let's start with, first I wanted to tell you a little bit about Reedsy. I used to subscribe to the Writer's Digest, and Reedsy always came out as one of the 100 websites if you're a writer. And what they do is they have insights of people who want to self-publish, and they connect people with people who make covers, people who proofread, people who edit, and it's sort of like a marketplace. But they also have a free blog with writing tips, and evidently they have books to read too. So it's a free website, and if you're a writer or just are interested in reading, I think it's a really good resource. Okay, so I'm going to count off the books, starting with number 1. And this was a really good list in the sense that there was a variety of men's and women's books, which is not always the case in some of these books. Okay, so the first book will be here, and it's Hamlet by Shakespeare. And what is it about? I'm going to give you a little bit of the summaries of these books, because not everybody knows every single classic book. Let's face it. Even I, after I read it, I said, oh yeah, that's what it's about. So Hamlet is, by Shakespeare. It's the ghost of the King of Denmark tells his son Hamlet to avenge his murder by killing the new king, Hamlet's uncle. Hamlet feigns madness, contemplates life and death, and seeks revenge. His uncle, fearing for his life, also devises plots to kill Hamlet. And a lot of people heard of, double, double, toil and trouble, and, all of the quotes from Hamlet, but they haven't actually read the book or even saw the play. And yeah, I think it's a well worth to be number one on the list, in my opinion. The second book is The Great Gatsby by, this is the third novel by American author F.Scott Fitzgerald, published in 1925, and is sometimes called the Great American Novel. I've read it a long time ago, and I think I was too young to really get the full picture of the book. So what is it about? It's set in jazz-age New York. It tells the tragic story of J. Gatsby, a self-made millionaire, and his pursuit of Daisy Buchanan, a wealthy young woman whom he loved in his youth. The book is narrated by Nick Carraway, who recounts the events of the summer of 1922 after he takes a house in the fictional village of West Egg on Long Island. So if you haven't read The Great Gatsby, maybe it's worthwhile since it's number 2 on the list. And number 3 I have read when I was a child. It's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. So Mark Twain's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn follows the eventful life of Huckleberry Finn, who wants to escape the influences of a civilized society. He fakes his death and runs away to sail on a raft on the Mississippi River with Jim, a runaway slave. The duo finds life on the Mississippi free and easy, and in dealing with conflicts that crop up on his travels, Huck Finn learns valuable lessons about responsibility and ethics. And this is by Mark Twain. And, it was written in the narration of Huckleberry Finn, and it's one of the first books I read that was written in dialect. And it does have racism in it, because in those times we're talking about slavery. So I'm pretty sure it was a banned book for many reasons at one time or another. But I did read it, and yeah, I remember liking it as a child. The third book, I was surprised. It's going to be right here. It's Emma by Jane Austen. And I was surprised that it was number 3 and the first book by a woman on the list. And it made me really want to read it again, because I read, for Jane Austen July, I've read almost every book of her finished novels, but I haven't read Emma again. I read it when I was like in my 30s. So what does it say about Emma? With its imperfect but charming heroine and its witty and subtle exploration of relationships, Emma is often seen as Jane Austen's most flawless work. Beautiful, clever, rich and single, Emma Woodhouse is perfectly content with her life and sees no need for either love or marriage. Nothing, however, delights her more than interfering in the romantic lives of others. But when she ignores the warnings of her good friend Mr. Knightley and attempts to arrange a suitable match for her protege, Harriet Smith, her carefully laid plans soon unravel and have consequences that she never expected. So if you like Emma, the best of Jane Austen's novels, tell me why, below. I like Persuasion, but now I'm really excited to read Emma again. Now the next book on the list is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, and this was a serialized book, and I think that's why I've been unsuccessful to read it, and I don't know, it'll be here. It's the 13th novel by Charles Dickens and his last completed novel. It depicts the education of an orphan nicknamed Pick. The book is a coming-of-age story. It is, it's called Bill Dung's Roman, which I found out last year means coming-of-age story. It is Dickens' second novel after David Copperfield to be fully narrated in first person. The novel was first published as a serial in Dickens' weekly periodical All the Year Round, from December 1st, 1860 to August 1861. The novel is set in Kent and London in the mid-19th century and contains some of Dickens' most celebrated scenes, starting in a graveyard where the young Pip is accosted by the escaped convict Abel Magwitch. Great Expectations is full of extreme imagery, poverty, prison ships and chains, and fights to the death, and has a colorful cast of characters who have entered popular culture. I think I've seen this as either a movie or a TV serial, and I remember Mrs. Havisham. I remember some of the characters in it, but I never was able to read the book as a whole. And I think the only way that I'd be able to read the book is if I read it as if it were still a serial and not try to go too fast with it. But I'll be honest, I'm not a great fan of Charles Dickens. I've only read one book when I was younger called Oliver Twist. And I did like that book, and it's not considered one of people's favorite books of his, but I did like it. It was very sad though. The next book is The Old Man and the Sea by American author Ernest Hemmingway, and that'll be here also. Ernest Hemmingway is also not one of my favorite authors. He's well known for not wasting any words, and he was also part of the F.Scott Fitzgerald group that were in Paris in the early 20s, along with F.Scott Fitzgerald's wife Zelda, who was quite the character at the time, and I don't think she came to a very good ending. But yeah, so I think they had sort of a frenemy relationship. So what is Old Man and the Sea about anyway? It's a novella, and written in 1951 in Cayo Blanco, Cuba, and published in 1952. It was the last major work of Ernest Hemingway that was published during his lifetime. One of the most famous works, it tells the story of Santiago, an aging Cuban fisherman who struggles with a giant marlin far out in the Gulf Stream off the coast of Cuba. I don't know, I'm not really into fish stories. I haven't read Moby Dick, and I'm really reconsidering reading it because of all the positive feedback that booktubers have given on Moby Dick. But I haven't heard anything yet about Old Man and the Sea, and yet it's on this list of very few classics to read. So I'll have to look further into it, but I'm thinking I'm passing for now anyway. The next book will be here, and I have read it. It's Portrait of a Lady by Henry James. And it's the story of a spirited young American woman, Isabel Archer, who, affronting her destiny, finds it overwhelming. She inherits a large amount of money and subsequently becomes the victim of scheming by two American expatriates. Like many of James' novels, it is set in Europe, mostly Europe, England, and Italy, and generally regarded as early masterpiece of James, his early period. It reflects his continuing interest in the differences between the New World and the Old World, often to the detriment of the former. It also treats in a profound way the themes of personal freedom, responsibility, and betrayal. And I said in my last video that I don't like books about betrayal. But in this book, it was a dense book. I took it out of the library and I was determined to read it, and I was very happy that I read it. But I'm not going to lie that it was an easy read for me. It was worthwhile, but I had a little bit of trouble, and I wish I had been a booktuber at that time so I could have buddy read it with someone. Well, it's not too late, is it? The next book I also tried to read, and it'll be here, Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, published in May 14th, 1925, and it details a day in the life of Clarissa Dalloway, a fictional upper-class woman in post-First World War England, and it is one of Woolf's best-known novels. Why I couldn't get into it is it's a book that's written in, and I'm trying to think of the word, a stream of consciousness. It's written in a stream of consciousness. And those kind of novels are not to my liking. I can't get into them. But it seems like for a stream of consciousness novel, it seems to be an easier read. So maybe I should try again. And the book describes Clarissa's preparation for a party she will host in the evening and the ensuing party. So it takes place in a day, and with an interior perspective, the story travels forwards and backwards in time to construct an image of Clarissa's life and of the interwar social structure. The novel addresses the nature of time and personal experience through multiple interwoven stories. And if I want to start with Virginia Woolf, maybe this is where I should start. The next book is The Grapes of Wrath. This is a book that I've read, but it'll be here. I don't have it in my shelf. It's by John Steinbeck, of course, and it's the best-known novel by him, published in 1939 during the Great Depression. It evokes the harshness of the Great Depression and arouses sympathy for the struggles of migrant farm workers, and the book came to be regarded as an American classic. This book was also banned for many reasons. One was that it was supposedly a positive look at communism, which some people didn't appreciate, and also it gave a bad name to the people who owned the farms and the people that were employing these people that were migrants from the Oklahoma Dust Bowl and other places, not only Oklahoma, but as I found out in another book that I read, it happens in Alabama and all over the Midwest at that time. And so even when they leave for California, they don't find a better life. The next book I do have, it's Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. And I haven't read this book in quite a while, and it's quite the tome, at least for me. It's over 500 pages. And it's about, of course, Jane Eyre, a seemingly plain and simple girl, as she battles through life's struggles. She has many obstacles in her life: her cruel and abusive Aunt Reed, the grim conditions of Lowood School, and her love for Rochester. This is, I think, one of the best books that I've ever read, and I haven't read it in a long time, but I really want to reread it because it's a tale that is so heart-wrenching, and at the same time it's a love story and it's not a love story, but it shows the cruelties of life, as a lot of these books do. So that's Jane Eyre. The next book I have is, and I just read this for Jane Austen July, is Pride and Prejudice. And it's about, of course, Elizabeth Bennet is one of 5 daughters, and they have no male heir, and the Bennet estate is going to pass to a cousin, William Collins. So the girls have to marry well, and so we know the story of the arrogant Mr. Darcy, and how he insults her in the beginning of the book, and how their relationship goes on from there, as well as all of the sisters. And it's a wonderful book. It should be on the list, and I'm glad it is on the list. And rounding out the rest of the list that I'm going to talk about today is Frankenstein, which I have not read. And Frankenstein was written by Mary Shelley, and she had another name too, Wollstonecraft. Okay, so so Victor Frankenstein is a scientist who wants to create life itself, and he stitches together parts from the dead bodies of criminals executed at the gallows. He brings his creation to life during an electrical storm, and the monster scares Frankenstein. He runs away. The monster spends years looking for a place in the world. Mostly other humans are afraid of it. After years alone, it decides to go back to Frankenstein to ask him to make another monster to be his wife. And I won't go to how, you know, it ends. A lot of people think that Frankenstein is the monster, but actually, you know, he's the evil genius. And I don't think that he was supposed to be evil. Now, Mary Shelley was only like 17 years old when she wrote this book. And from what I understand, it was a contest to write a ghost story. And this turns out to be the first science fiction book that was ever written. So I do want to read it. You know, even though I thought I knew the story of Frankenstein and I thought it couldn't teach me anything, I think there's you know, there's a deeper meaning in this book that Mary Shelley was trying to bring out, even though she said that this book was from a dream. Anyway, that's part one of the essential books that you should read before you die. And I hope that you like this video, and let me know if you want to see part two sooner other than later. And please subscribe to my channel if you're so inclined to, and press the notification bell and comment and like. I really enjoyed doing this video because I realized that I haven't read as many classic books as I want to. And when I'm going through these lists, I love lists. So lists of books that maybe I would have, you know, not read if I hadn't heard that it's essential by, even though it's by, you know, somebody that I, you know, a website that is not one that one usually looks to for book reviews. But I think they did a good job in this list, and I think they had a good balance of male and female, which usually doesn't happen. Well, you know, female writers weren't as accepted. You know, some female writers like Jane Austen had to put a male name before they even got published, or did it through a brother or something, because women have had a lot of prejudice against them of being in the arts at all. So anyway, until my next video, I will say aloha.